Sample problem 2.13 says name the following anions and give the name and formula of the acid derived from each. So, if I look at A, we're going to look at A first. Br minus, that's an anion, gets an "ide" ending. So we're going to call, so that ion, the name of it is going to be bromide. Now, if I form an acid, anytime we form an acid, all we're doing is adding a hydrogen, right? We're just adding a hydrogen, which is a cation, to that negative anion. So let me write the formula for what we're going to have here. We're going to have HBr for our acid, right? Bromide has a -1. That H, when we form the acid, has a +1 charge. So we're going to have HBr. Now, the rules for naming acids can be found on page 70 in Chapter 2. And it says binary acids form when certain gaseous compounds dissolve in water, right, and they get the hydrogen added. And so the prefix for the name is going to be hydro. Then you give it the non-metal root name and the "ic" ending, and then a separate word, acid. So hydro, our non-metal is bromine. It gets the "ic," hydrobromic, and then the word acid. Now, also on page 70, you'll see rules for naming oxoacids. So B part, or B, that's going to be one of those polyatomic ions. This has an oxygen in it. So this is going to be one of those oxoacids. And the name of that IO3 minus from our polyatomic ion chart is iodate. So let's go ahead and write that down. Iodate. And the acid we're going to be forming, right, should be HiO3. So we've got to name this thing. And so the rules say that if it has an "ate" ending, it gets an "ic" in the acid. And so this one has the "ate" ending, right? This is iodate. So it gets an "ic" ending, so I'm going to say iodic. And then it gets the word acid added to it. So this is iodic acid. Then C part, right, this is another one of those polyatomic ions. This is cyanide. Okay, and so our formula would be HCN, and we're going to follow the naming scheme like we did in A. This is going to get the hydro, because this is not an oxoacid, right? So hydrocyanic, right, it gets the "ic" ending. And then the word acid. D, HSO4 minus. This is going to be one of those polyatomic ions. This is hydrogen sulfate. So let's write that down. Right? It has the SO4, which is the sulfate, and there's a hydrogen with it, so that's where the name comes from. Hydrogen sulfate, right? The hydrogen is the cation, lists first. All right, when we form our acid, the formula is going to be H2SO4. Now, this is going to be one of those oxoacids, right? So it's going to get the "ic" ending, sulfuric acid.